Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this afternoon. A very great topic we're going to discuss over the next hour. But first and foremost, I'd like to welcome everyone that is here in person, and especially a very warm welcome to all our online guests, and thank you for joining us today. First up, it's my great pleasure to welcome and introduce everyone to Uncle Alan Murray from the Metropolitan Local Aboriginal Land Council, and I'd like to now invite Uncle Alan to the lectern for the Welcome to Country. Thank you.
Oh, great. How are you? Hello out there. I just want to acknowledge that we're on Gadigal land, but also understand that this is going out far and wide. So I want to acknowledge all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here in New South Wales, particularly in Queensland, the Torres Strait Islander community, but also in Western Australia. We're talking about Noongas, Nungas, and also the traditional societies across Australia. So we're not homogeneous, we're not one, we're many. So there are 250 Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander clans in Australia. Before colonisation, before the European ships came into Sydney Harbour, there was something like 500 different clans. So we've had a major impact on European, I suppose, coming to Australia, and they devastated us in terms of who we are. The Metropolitan Local Land Council. Why the Metropolitan Local Land Council? We become the custodians of the lands because 29 clans that make up all the clans in Sydney, 27 clans have been wiped off the map. Wiped off the map. There are 54 clans that make up all the clans here in New South Wales. I can't speak for other clans outside New South Wales. Imagine that we've had 500 at the beginning of the European ships coming to here in Sydney, down to with the numbers today. But I pay respects to the Gadigal people and the Bidjigal people of the Eora Nation. And as a land council and as a chairperson, we become by default, the custodians of the land to make sure we do proper introductory welcome to countries, also demonstrate our protocols in terms of our culture and the many, many Aboriginal people here who live here in Sydney. Just looking at the, needle in the haystack, and you think about the first contact with Aboriginal people here in Australia, changing our gathering and our food intakes and so forth. We're not meant to be eating sugar. We're not meant to be eating flour. We're not in terms of byproducts. We're not meant to be eating. We're meant to be eating the traditional way of living. But because we're in the urban setting here in Sydney, we have to, buy the groceries instead of going out to the bush, to the supermarket in order to eat off the land. And because of that reverse cycle of eating, that means we have to change our diet. So we don't have a protective gene in our system to protect against the Western society foods. So that's why we have a high rate of diabetes and also the heart condition. But if we can go back in time and change everything, but we can't, but we're living with the reality that, and you're saying, 2 in 3 people just die because of this disease. I'll say it's 1 in 1 in terms of our communities that Aboriginal people are dying because of the different diseases that have been introduced to us. So, but Welcome to Country is about understanding us and showing that respect, making sure that you can connect with us and make sure that we do have events like that to recognise the differences and coming together to make sure we have a general purpose, and that is to make sure we can stamp out that. So with that, have a great evening. Welcome to Gadigal land. I pay respect to their elders past and emerging, but one of those things about this land is that it's always been owned by Aboriginal people. And we have a saying, always will be Aboriginal land. So Good evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Uncle Alan. I would also like to acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, the traditional custodians of the country which we meet on today. So today's event, it's part of the Centenary Institute's When Health Meets Science series. A little bit about the series. I know many of you have joined our past events where the Institute has been able to showcase the research in the areas of healthy ageing, biomedical AI, and cancer. And many of you are intimately aware of the Centenary Institute and know some of our biggest and are some of our biggest supporters, and others may not know us so closely. And at the end of this, we hope you know us even more. One thing about the Institute, we were established 40 years ago to recognise the centenaries of RPA Hospital and the University of Sydney Medical School. And we do still remain strongly affiliated to the Sydney Local Health District and the university. And we bring together bench to bedside healthcare that improves outcomes for patients and the wider community that we associate with. And the core of what we do is always to better understand the fundamental nature of the human body and the disease, with the goal of driving new medicines and techniques to overcome this disease or issues that we are all dealing with. And over 40 years, the Institute has celebrated many, many special achievements. These have contributed to increasing global knowledge and tackling humanity's most pressing health challenges. Within the Institute, we have 7 centres undertaking research ranging from the most advanced biomedical AI to cancer innovations, healthy ageing, immunity, rare diseases, and of course, Richard's Clinic. And today we want to shine the spotlight on the Centre for Cardiovascular Research, and in particular, the area of genetic heart conditions. And now with that, it is my great pleasure to introduce our panel members and invite them to the stage. Firstly, Associate Professor Richard Bagnall, Head of the Centre for Cardiovascular Research. Dr. Charlotte Burns, Associate Genetic Counsellor in the Centre for Cardiovascular Research and the Genetic Heart Disease Clinic. And of course, our special guests, Meg and Adrian Bellingham, our big supporters over the years of the Centenary Research and Richard's work. We're very close here.
Yeah.
Richard, let's start with you. So tragically, each week in Australia, up to 3 young people die suddenly and unexpectedly from sudden cardiac death, often due to an undiagnosed heart condition. Your research, Richard, is dedicated to identifying the genetic causes of heart disease and improving that diagnosis. What does this research actually involve, and what type of techniques are you using within Centenary?
Sure. So the name genetic heart disease gives away the clue. These are conditions that are caused by a change in your DNA. And because we inherit DNA from our family, these conditions often run within a family. So that means if somebody's diagnosed with a genetic heart disease, it means that their parents, their brothers, sisters, and children, if they have them, they could also be at risk of developing these diseases. Now, people can be diagnosed with these conditions at the hospital and they receive excellent care. But diagnosing these conditions, it can be quite tricky because the symptoms might be subtle, or some of the symptoms might overlap between different diseases. And this is where the type of research that we do comes to the fore, because we provide genetic testing in individuals with these genetic heart diseases, and that provides a very precise diagnosis. So if we find the cause of the disease, and we're very certain of that, it helps the clinical management of the family. They can be managed very precisely. We can identify people in the family who are at risk, and we can identify those who are not at risk as well. Sometimes we find a variant and we're a little bit unsure about whether or not it's the cause of the disease. And this is where the laboratory work comes to play. because we can test that variant. We might have some functional assays, for example, and we can then give a little bit of certainty whether or not the variant is the cause. And then sometimes we might perform a genetic test and we find nothing. There's no cause found at this point in time. And this is where the longer term research, where we are collecting such cases of the undiagnosed genetic heart diseases, and we hope that with time, we'll be able to identify new genetic causes, the new diseases, and then we'll be able to go back to these individuals and hopefully make a diagnosis. In terms of the techniques, what do we actually do? Well, everything starts with a blood sample. We take a blood sample from an individual who has a genetic heart condition or who's passed away suddenly, and we perform DNA sequencing. And this is where we read the DNA sequence of the individual. That's 3 billion letters of A, C, G, and T repeated over and over again. And we use computers, we use laboratory methods and cell studies to try and work out which variant, because we all have variants in our DNA, which variant is the one that causes the disease. So it might be that we use the computers to annotate or label these variants. Are they in a gene that's important for the heart? Or are they in a region of the DNA that increases the amount of the protein and then or makes it in the right type of cell? We might do some studies that looks at the protein, see how much of the protein is there, or whether it's shortened and therefore not functional. And we do computer assays as well. One really exciting thing is that we can take somebody's blood and we can turn that blood into heart cells. So we have in a dish a beating heart cells, and it's almost like we can do a virtual heart check on them. We can measure the electrical rhythm, we can measure how well they contract. And an emerging technology is we can actually correct or change any single DNA sequence so that we end up with 2 plates, one with and one without the change. And then we can see what the difference is between the two. If we correct a variant and it corrects any faults, then maybe that was the cause of the disease. So these are the types of approaches that we use, but ultimately everything is to help families receive better care in the hospital clinics.
That was the shortened response. Charlotte, the sudden and unexpected death of a young person presents perhaps one of the most complex clinical situations faced by healthcare professionals. The care of families affected by sudden cardiac death is best delivered in a specialised multidisciplinary genetic heart disease clinic. Tell us and everyone out there how families are introduced to the clinic and explain how the clinic works with these families.
Absolutely. I've been working in this area for 12 years and I will never get used to or comfortable sitting with a family who've lost their loved one. Sudden death is complex to manage medically, and this program here, the research alongside the clinical service, is really the best place to thoroughly investigate and try and come up with answers for these families. Families come to us through a number of avenues, but primarily if someone's died suddenly and unexpectedly, if nothing is found, or if there's a suspicion that it was a genetic heart disease, they should be given the contact details of our service. Once we see the family, we look after them in 3 key ways. Number 1, usually these conditions are autosomal dominant, which means there's a 50% chance for all first-degree relatives that they have the same condition. So we offer clinical screening, that's comprehensive clinical investigation of all first-degree relatives, and we've got ties with the paediatric group for kids. Number 2, psychological support, which is obviously just as important as the medical component. Number 3, and primarily where the research comes in, is genetic testing. So we offer genetic testing to the person who passed away. A blood sample should be saved in New South Wales and Australia on someone young who died unexpectedly. We don't always find the answer, and in fact, we only find it in up to 45% of families once we've done all of that. And so obviously research comes into play there, where we cast the net wider, trying to find an answer and to prevent it from happening again.
Full answer. Now to our very special guests, Meg and Adrian. First of all, thank you from all of us for being here and being able to share your personal story. This year's 8 years since you lost your beautiful son, Aiden, suddenly at the age of 24. If you both feel comfortable, are you able to share with us what the status is with your understanding the cause behind Aiden's sudden passing?
Sure, thanks, Pete. Not long after we lost Aiden, and there was certainly a sense of frustration that we didn't know what was happening and what was going on, and we didn't have any answers. We were lucky enough that we were pointed in the right direction of the Centenary Institute, and at that stage they conducted some genetic testing. And unfortunately, following that testing, and it took a fair while for the results to come back, there was nothing significant found in the testing of Aiden. So we moved to the next level, and we got our daughter, Ashley, and Meg and I, we had some tests, and again, nothing significant came out of those. So we're sort of in a holding pattern at the present moment, and I suppose it's a certain amount of frustration coupled with pain, coupled with, it's sort of difficult to use one word on to explain how we feel, but we know that we are in the safest of hands, and Richard referred to it before, that new tests come up and new Aiden will be tested again. And we're hoping and praying that one day we will get a phone call from someone at the Centenary Institute and say, we need to talk. We've found an answer, or we have some additional information. We're just sort of sitting and waiting. We have some friends who are in exactly the same boat as us. And I think it took about 8 years for them to get an answer, but eventually they got an answer, and that's what we're waiting for as well. It is a huge roller coaster of emotions, the whole process. You know, coming back here to Sydney today and be back with the team, and we truly consider the team family. We've become that close to them, and it's a roller coaster of emotions for Meg and Ashley and our extended family, brothers, sisters, and that's a source of frustration for them, because without them knowing anything, and again, as Richard referred to, you know, if we had some sort of answers, and then we could take the next step and look at what other members of the family may need to, you know, take the next step in the way of testing. But as I said, we know very much that we are in the safest of hands with our family at the Centenary Institute.
Adrian, how did you come across the Centenary Institute, and where was the introduction?
I suppose in this day and age, social media plays a huge part in the way that we all do business to a certain extent. Well, and how we communicate. Our daughter Ashley was not long after we lost Aiden, was approached by a work colleague that had found an article in a newspaper, and reached out to Ashley and said, you know, this sounds very similar to what you had told us about Aiden. And I'll let Meg take up the story, because she's the one that took the lead, and how we eventually got in contact with Centenary Institute. Darling?
Okay, so Ashley brought the newspaper clipping home, which was an interview with the ABC, with the family involved. And I tracked down the family and found that they were only 20 minutes away from our home. And she invited us to her house. So we went and had a chat and advised us for our family to go and see the Centenary. So we reached out. And that's how we ended up
Yeah,
here.
There we are.
beautiful.
Amazing.
Back to Charlotte quickly. Charlotte, families and patients are now able to be cared for in a dedicated genetic heart disease clinic. How does this provide greater support and better outcomes for these families?
I think the ideal model of care for these families is one that is multidisciplinary, because this is a complex issue that can't be dealt with by one clinician. Having everything streamlined, communicated, broadcast is helpful, because we hear time and time again, probably like Adrian and Meg here, that the wait after someone's died suddenly and unexpectedly, the wait with the coroner, the uncertainty, not knowing where to turn is extremely difficult. So with a specialised service, with the resources available to communicate a streamlined process, that's incredibly helpful. Families are going through the worst time of their lives, and they don't need to drive around finding the right specialist to see them and their family members. So having it all in one place means a lot. It's also reasonably complex and requires a lot of investigation. And so again, having specialists who are able to interpret all the data, clinicians and researchers like Richard, provides us with the best possible chance of finding an answer. The number one question, or number two questions that we get from every family pretty much are, why did this happen and how can we stop it from happening again? And seeing families in a service like this that has strong links to the research program gives us the best possible chance of finding out. And, you know, as we've already heard, I've got families who I saw 10 years ago and wasn't able to provide them with an answer as a group. And 10 years down the track, with the benefit of new research and developments from Richard and his team, we've been able to find an answer. It's important, obviously, for the person who died, gives us a reason, but also the first degree relatives. It gives us a proactive way of managing their risk, of working out who's at risk and who needs to be looked after by a clinician.
Meg, how has the team at the heart disease clinic been able to help you along the way?
I've written my response. Okay, firstly, I want to say hi to our daughter, Ashley, who's watching from home. And I want to quietly mention the importance of sibling support as much as parental support. The clinic has given us amazing support and assistance. The information we have in regard to complex genetic causes of sudden cardiac death has been invaluable. We knew nothing prior to losing Aidan. But it is very confronting to be told up to 3 families a week are affected, with the most prevalent being under 35 years of age, and Aidan was 24. I'll get through it. Yeah. Okay, he was a stereotypical fit, healthy athlete. There was no warning, no reason. The clinic has provided our family with the hope, and we had none, and the reassurance they'll never stop looking for answers for us. Above all this, the emotional support we receive is first and foremost because, as you can imagine, we were in a situation we had no idea how to negotiate. And being informed and supported gave us strength to be a voice for Aidan. Also, the Institute and all families who have or will experience this heartache. If we make a difference to just one more family, then we are succeeding. For Aidan, he was so dearly loved and missed.
Oh. You should be proud of what you've done. Adrian and Meg, you established Bellingham Cup 70 years ago. By you, your family, and the wider community as a tribute to Aidan. You both advocate now for raising awareness of sudden cardiac death in the youth and the research at the Centenary Institute. Give us a few words, or what does it mean and why is it so important to you both?
Wow. The Bellingham Cup gets us out of bed in the morning. It's as simple as that. The actual football club that Aidan played for at the time, he was a player and coach at the University of Canberra Football Club. And we lost him in the October of 2017, and the following year, the club initiated the Bellingham Cup, and basically they wanted to use it to kick off their season, have a bit of fun, have a bit of mucking around, and just, you know, remember who was a guy who was their best friend, the guy who you rang at 3 o'clock in the morning when you got kicked out of the nightclub because he'll come and pick you up. He had a ute. Now, any young person that knows a mate that's got a ute, you're going to use them all the time to move because you'll move 10 times a year. So he's the mate that would come around and help move you from your old residence to your new residence. What the Bellingham Cup has allowed us to do is to take it to the next level. We've picked up some amazing supporters, and I won't call them sponsors, they're supporters of ours. And we recognise every single one of them. It doesn't matter whether they've given us $50 worth of tucker to sell on the day or $500. Everybody is a supporter of the Bellingham Cup. It's also an opportunity to get together for the club and have a bit of fun, play for what is now the Bellingham Cup, and get out there and remember Aidan. He was an exceptionally good footballer. He played at the highest level in Canberra, and he was a very much respected young man, and that made us very, very proud. So the Bellingham Cup brings together families. We have supporters, and I ensure that there's always kids when they turn up. Every young person gets a soccer ball to take home. Every person under the age of about, well, I think David stole one this year, I'm not sure. So it's like that. But it's not only just about raising money. The biggest thing for us is about raising awareness. And you can't put a price on that, on raising the awareness. And there's a few things that we've done in association with running the Bellingham Cup, which was only last weekend. And I'm proud to say that we were joined by an amazing team of people from the Centenary Institute come down and had a bit of fun with us on the day as well, so which was just amazing. But we've done a couple of other things. We've introduced we did this a few years ago, and with some huge success, where we have a pay it forward card. Those who are familiar with the term, we have a card by which you can, when you're next buying yourself a cup of coffee, pay for two, but only take one away, and give the card to the barista and say, the next person that comes in, give them the card and tell them that their coffee is paid for in memory of our son. And on the back of the card is a little story about where we're up to and how we do it and what happens, with the information about the Centenary Institute. So all of a sudden, that information is getting out there. We have family and friends that pester us all the time about getting more cards from us. We've got friends who are over in Europe at the present moment who probably took 50 cards with them, and they're going to do it over there. And we're hoping that in the not too distant future, we get a message on our Bellingham Cup website that says, "Hi, my name is, and I'm from Sweden, and I received something for nothing in Aidan's memory." And it's about getting the message out there. And it's about talking about that awareness. And that's just as important to us as well as raising the money that we do. The other thing that we did this year, and that was deliberate as well, is that we've wandered into some merchandise. And one of the things I did consciously is that we got some beanies. For those who have been to Canberra, it can get a little bit fresh in winter. I don't know whether fresh is the right word, but it can get a little bit fresh. So we've done some beanies, and I deliberately put just initials BC on the beanies because I want somebody to ask the person who is wearing the beanie what BC stands for. So all of a sudden we have a conversation about the Bellingham Cup and what it's about and the Centenary Institute. And that's the connection that we've tried to make. And that's important to us. It is very important to us. As much as getting the message out there is raising the money that we have done with the Bellingham Cup. Is there anything, darling, you'd like to add?
Not today.
No, you're not the first person that said that, but I'm happy to talk to you later and we'll get one to you.
Adrian, Meg, from all of us, like $50,000 in 7 years is an incredible task. It's hard to raise money these days. Just ask me and my team. But what you've done over 7 years has made a massive difference to Richard, to Charlotte, to all the staff that he has. So from all of us, thank you. So I think that's a massive round of applause. Last question for the boss. Richard, looking back at the past decade and then looking forward 10 years from now, how much has our knowledge improved and where do you think we will be in 10 years?
So when I started at the Centenary, 2008, we used to look at a handful of genes at a time, and it would take maybe 6 months to do that in one person. Technology came along in about 2010 that allowed us to look at the entire genome within a few weeks. So what this means is we now have, on people with these inherited heart conditions and sudden cardiac death, we have a record of every single variant in their genome. It means that in future, if a new gene is reported as causing these conditions, we can immediately go back to the data and we can look and see if any of the people that we have a variant in this gene. And that's the first issue, the first advance, the technology. The second is that we're getting much better at identifying which variant is a cause of disease and which is not. We can do that through comparing against population data. We now have a database of 100,000 people or more who don't have disease, and we compare that to our group of people with disease. So if we're finding variants in the group of people with disease that are absent in the 100,000 normal people, it's a really good indication that there's something amiss there. Helps us focus and identify new genes. In future, I think things like artificial intelligence, we hear about this. It's the ability of a computer to see pattern in a data that we don't see with our naked eye and be able to identify some features. It's happening with the way heart rhythm are detected. It's happening with the way that skin cancers are detected. And I think it'll be happening with the way that we can identify variants that are causes of disease rather than those that are benign. I've already mentioned this emerging ability to be able to edit DNA, to be able to correct a variant. I think that over the next 10 years, that's going to develop very well.
Richard just signed himself up for another 10 years at Centenary. We're now going to open for our guests, both in person and online, to ask any questions that they wish to ask the team up here. And Alison's going to read out the questions. Or if someone in person's got a question, please feel free to put your hand up.
If anyone has any, we've got a microphone down the back of the room.
Adrian, what do you guys see as the future of the Bellingham Cup? How big do you want to get this?
Great question. We've discussed this on numerous occasions and with the club as well. At the present moment, we don't want to have it open to everybody to start bringing teams in to the Bellingham Cup. Aidan played for the University of Canberra, and at the present moment, the day is about the University of Canberra players, past and present and future, that come along and have a bit of fun on the day. And they use that to kick off their season. So we're at a place now with the Bellingham Cup where we're generating great awareness, we're generating some good money, and I think we're in a good place at the present moment. There's always the opportunity to tweak things and take on, more donations and things like that, which we're always going to be open to. But the Bellingham Cup is in a great place. And for those who are interested, we do have a Facebook page and a web page. Please come along and say hello. Just a plug as well, I'm sorry.
No, go for it. We have a first question from online from Jackie. So Jackie has asked, we've been talking a lot about Australian research. What is happening regarding research on the world scale? Is research shared? Did you want to start with that, Richard?
Sure. Yeah, research is definitely shared amongst Australia, New Zealand, overseas, Europe, and America. So a lot of the research that we do will hopefully become published as it does. We also look out for publications from other research teams. So we see what other people are doing. If they make a finding, we can replicate that within our data. We do have very good links with the UK and America. And so we can actually pool together data. If we find a particular variant that we're suspicious of, but we're not quite sure if it's the cause of the disease, we can email our friends overseas and ask if they've also seen the same variant in any of their patients. There are online databases where all of the results of genetic testing get uploaded, and you can search that. And it's a really good way of finding, I guess, a culprit disease variant, because if it keeps on reoccurring in other people who are unrelated, it gives a lot of confidence that you have found the true cause. And of course, in addition, we go to international conferences where we share our results, the most recent findings, things that maybe haven't even been published yet. We get to meet other collaborators and maybe start new collaborations as well. So international collaboration is definitely strong.
Yeah, Charlotte?
A paper was just published in the UK, actually, and one of our doctors from our clinic was involved in that study, which showed after comprehensive clinical screening and genetic testing in a young person who's died suddenly, they only found the answer in 45% of cases. So even internationally, there's 55% of families who this happens to, and we don't know what happened. So in spite of collaborative efforts and, open data sharing, etc., it's still a big question mark for many families, and there's still much to learn.
Thank you. Just go back to in the room. So we've got a question just in the middle here, David.
Our family's experienced situation, and I'm just wondering, does the coroner's office necessarily, who has the samples of blood, does it necessarily get to your program to test? Like, do you get access to all of the cases where this is where?
It's a good question. I can start and then
Sure.
Richard can jump in. It's something we're working on. So we've set up a multidisciplinary meeting with the forensic department, which is actually starting next May, to try and improve this process. A blood sample must be saved on people under 55 when they pass away suddenly and unexpectedly. So the DNA and the blood sample is there, but getting it to the right place can be difficult to navigate. There should be a social worker or a liaison officer at the coroner's office who deals with the family and points them in the right direction, whether that be us or the paediatric team. But that process is still a work in progress, and there's much to learn and much advocacy to happen to make sure that it's more streamlined. So the blood sample doesn't automatically get shipped across to our research institute or our clinic. The family have to get in touch, they have to be referred, we have to see them, and then part of my job is to obtain consent to get that blood sample to the right place.
So when will they need that blood sample for?
A long period. I've gone back after 10 years and the sample has still been there. It's unlikely. Yeah. Yeah.
Notice.
Of course.
You
Just got.
I just wanted to ask if you could explain this. I lost my
I'm sorry.
in 1981.
Mm.
And he was in a walkathon at school. He just collapsed. And we just couldn't understand it. I have 11 children.
Mm.
And I used to say he had more energy than all the other kids put together. And he was never sick. I had no reason to know that there was anything wrong with his heart. So, yeah, it's good to read that. Maybe you can explain it better than what it was explained to us at the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Probably I can't as much as Charlotte or
okay.
Richard.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. We can definitely have a look into that afterwards for you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah, that's okay. Unless you wanted to answer
No,
now,
yeah, I
Charlotte,
can
Richard.
talk to you afterwards.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry that you lost
Yeah.
your son at 10.
Yeah.
That's horrible and tragic.
Yeah.
And no matter how much time has passed, a mother will never get over that.
Yeah.
Yesterday was the anniversary.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
We've come a long way since that time in how we manage families like yours, but we obviously
Yeah.
still have a lot to learn.
Nothing was ever
Yeah.
said.
Found.
The doctor said
Mm.
it might have been something that happened as he grew up. Or I asked, but
Yeah.
because I was nearly 40 when I had him, and she said that.
It's absolutely not your fault, and we can assure every mother of that.
Not too late with this lady, that testing done?
Yeah,
To
I'll
see
have
if
a look
there's
at the letter
anything-
and we can talk, but yeah. So the advice, if it were now, would be for your son's first degree relatives. If it happened now, the advice would be for your son's first degree relatives to be checked.
Oh, she took us
By
all
a
to the doctors and
cardiologist.
all the-
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
all of them, the older ones didn't think they needed to go.
Mm.
Yeah. Of course.
But I thought to myself, if they don't go and they find out later that there's something wrong, what can we do about it?
Yeah.
Or if there was something wrong, still what can we do about it? You know, we don't know anything about it.
It would have been totally different testing then too.
Mm.
Yeah. Completely.
Sorry to be in trouble.
No.
Of course, no, thank you so much for sharing. We've got a couple more questions online as well. The first one is just from Ashley, Megan Adrian. She just wanted to send my huge thank you to the Centenary team for the support they have provided my family, and hi, Mum and Dad from Ashley. So I'll pass that on. The next question is from Annette. So she has asked, how many disease variants have been found over the last 10 years? Are you expecting that with AI and big data, the speed of research findings may accelerate?
Sure. So in each case, we usually find a different variant. It's not that one variant accounts for multiple people. It's usually within each family, they have their own specific variant within that family. And that's what makes the challenge so much bigger. If it was the same variant happening across many people, that would be a lot easier. Occasionally, the same variant does happen in two unrelated families, but that's just by chance. So predominantly, these are variants that are family specific. As in for the number of variants, it would be, if we do genetic testing and find a cause in up to 45% of cases, there are many different variants in many different genes.
Thank you. Our next question is from Glennis. So they have asked, is there any new information on the ACTN2 gene mutation? I'm not sure if you're across that one specifically, Richard.
ACTN2.
ACTN2, yes.
All right. There's many different types of variants within that gene. It's a gene that's called actinin-2, and it's unusual in that a variant in that gene can cause many different types of heart disease. There's a thing called left ventricular non-compaction, dilated cardiomyopathy, and unexplained sudden cardiac death. So it's a gene that we're well aware of. As for a specific variant, we would have to talk offline and see what the variant is.
Absolutely, thank you. Our next question online, we've had a few come through, is from Bronwyn. She's asked, in Victoria, when our daughter passed away suddenly, we found out months later she had a previously undiagnosed cardiac disease, cardiomyopathy. The coroner then referred us to the Royal Melbourne Hospital, who commenced the genetic testing with our family and was covered through Medicare. Does that happen in New South Wales? Charlotte, do you know the answer to that?
Yes, I do. So the process is the same. However, sudden death genetic testing is not covered by Medicare. So Medicare doesn't cover genetic testing in someone who has passed away, which is one of the challenges that we've dealt with for years. Up until a few years ago, as Adrian and Meg encountered, we got around that by doing all of our genetic testing in our research group, which obviously took a very long time. It's not, the most ideal way of doing this as a first line test. And so that's one of the challenges that we're encountering in practice at the moment, the fact that it's not covered. In our clinic, we like to do a clinical genetic test first. Again, not covered by Medicare. So usually I write around to various heads of departments to see if they'll fund the test. And once we get funding for that, if nothing is found in that first clinical test, then we send it over to Richard's group, if the family consent, our group, and try and cast the net wider. And that's the point at which we have that DNA library that Richard spoke about, where for a finite sample, a precious sample, someone's already passed away, they're no longer here, we can always go back and have a look at a particular gene and a particular spot on a gene.
Thank you. Our next comment is from Jennifer online. She said, "Dear Meg and Adrian, I want to acknowledge your beautiful son and all the fundraising work you have done in this area. We lost our firstborn son, also named Aidan, in 2018. He was 22 and totally beloved. It's a shattering experience and changes us in many ways. We will remember our Aidan to know their wholeness, their specialness, because that person is a part of us and we take them forward with us in our hearts all the time. And the world has been so lucky to have them as part of the cosmos." From Jenny and Edmund.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Linda also asked online, do you have testing for FH or associated conditions? I'm not sure what FH is. Richard and Charlotte, you might be aware. If so, how do we arrange it, please?
That's familial hypercholesterolemia, so also an inherited heart condition, but to do with cholesterol. It's a different subspecialty than what we deal with, but there are services out there. There's one run by David Sullivan in this particular precinct. Happy to talk offline if they need some help with how to get there. Yeah.
I'll pause quickly. We have a few more questions online. Were there any other questions in the room? Okay, I'll continue. Mark has asked online, what support do you receive from the Australian or state governments for your research? I know you've covered Medicare, but it might be worth, Richard, maybe if you wanted to cover other research funding.
Predominantly, the research is funded through research studies, where we will apply for funding We'll have to write a research proposal, which will then be evaluated, and it's a competitive process. So at the minute, rate of success is around about 15% across Australia for something like the NHMRC, so the National Medical Health Research Council. They're the federal funding. Here in New South Wales Health is an excellent supporter of cardiovascular research, and they've done an amazing job in funding a lot of my research and my work. But it's still a very competitive process. And that's why fundraising like the Bellingham's doing and the Bellingham Cup and like today's Giving Day is so important, because it means that we can really target our funding to exactly where we need it at the time when we need it.
So unfortunately, we've run out of time. We have noticed a couple more questions. We'll get back to those people after the session. Thank you.
Thank you, team. One of the things that Charlotte did mention then was about the lack of funding that their centre gets. And for the last probably 4 months, the team, fundraising team, marketing and comms team, and the amount of times I think I've pestered Richard in the last 6 weeks. He hasn't kicked me out of his office yet, so it's a blessing. This morning we kicked off the first ever Centenary Giving Day, which is basically 24 hours of fundraising to raise as many funds as we possibly can to keep Richard's and Charlotte's centre ticking over so that they're not continually fighting the government for more money. So with that, I'd like to show you the first of the videos, which basically promotes what we're doing and why we're doing it and the work that the team does.
This year's Giving Day is primarily to raise funds for our genetic cardiac clinic. And this is a clinic which services and provides help to families that have experienced a sudden cardiac death.
Every week in Australia, 2 to 3 young people aged 1 to 35 years die from a sudden cardiac death. The ultimate goal of our research is to prevent further sudden cardiac deaths from happening in our community.
As part of our service, we offer comprehensive clinical screening and also genetic testing in the person who died. A lot of our research here focuses on the over 50% of families where we don't find an answer.
Our existing genetic heart disease clinics have a waiting list of up to 12 months. Your support of our clinics will help slash the waiting times for families who urgently need our care.
To offer comprehensive family investigation for a family in our service, it can cost up to $15,000 per family.
Please donate on Centenary's Giving Day. You can help us find more answers for more of our families.
Donations on Centenary Giving Day will help us save more lives.
Please give on Centenary's annual Giving Day to support our genetic heart clinic.
Very touching video. So with that, how much are we up to, Karen? Karen's going to show us the live website that's been ticking along since 11 o'clock this morning. And so far, I think up to about 2:30, we'd raised nearly $40,000 and had over 100 people donating. So currently we're sitting, as you can see, we have set ourselves a huge target of 150,000. And that will no doubt go hopefully a long way to helping Richard and his work. But if we could, triple that or even more to keep his work going. So that's what's happening today. And the best way to donate, I think you'll see on your chairs, you have a flyer. And for those online, you will see a QR code where you'll be able to click straight on and donate for the next till 11 o'clock tomorrow morning. There it is. And there's the actual web page. So anyone who gets a chance to donate and help out this team, I know Meg and Adrian have done so much work for that team, but it's now our time to support them and show that our community is good as what Meg and Adrian's community is down in Canberra. So with that, I'd like to thank you all for coming today. I know it's been a great, sometimes harrowing opportunity to hear what the four of them have had to say, and it definitely pulls at a lot of emotions. So thank you, Meg and Adrian. And with that, I'd like everyone to join us for refreshments next door once we've all concluded. And obviously, if you want to talk to Richard or Charlotte, grab a quick word. But if not, we'll all see you next door. Thank you so much to everyone online, and thank you to everyone in attendance.